Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brooks Rakeford. I'm president of the North Carolina Technology Association, or NCTech. Welcome to this special session of our Government Vendor Network. For those who are new, these sessions are an opportunity for us to invite public sector leaders to come and share their activities and priorities with their current and potential business partners. Typically, we hold these sessions quarterly, but now and then we have cause to add an extra program, like when there's a new state CIO, for example. We had originally scheduled this special session for mid-March to be held in downtown Raleigh, but for obvious reasons, we shifted the date and the format. We've had a terrific response with over 150 of our members joining us today. So thanks to the magic of video, we're glad to have all of you with us. And on that note, a quick shout out to our longtime member, Cisco, which is our video conference partner through their WebEx product. As most of you know, we're fortunate to have had the expertise of Brooks Pierce Law Firm for many years as our legislative counsel, led by Ed Turlington along with his colleague, Matt Bales. After our featured speakers segment, they will offer a brief legislative overview to close out our session today. A few announcements first. As you can imagine, we have converted a number of existing programming to virtual sessions, and we'll also be adding new ones as well along the way. You'll see that we've launched an NC Tech Talk series where I interview leaders from various sectors. We hosted a virtual job fair just yesterday that was very successful with over 1,000 candidates registered and more than 20 employers and exhibitors. And we'll be adding more of those types of things to our calendar later in the year. And we'll be hosting our upcoming Diversity and Inclusion in Tech Summit as a virtual event next month. I'd encourage you to check out our calendar at nctech.org/events to keep track of what we're offering. We've also been conducting a poll twice monthly since the end of March, where we asked several hundred leaders in the tech sector how the pandemic is affecting their operations, sales, hiring plans, and more. We also asked for their predictions on when they expect to see signs of recovery and in-person interaction. The polls have garnered a lot of attention in the media, and you can check out the latest results from our mid-May poll by visiting the Resources tab on our website and select the NC Tech Pulse option from the drop-down menu. You'll notice we've consolidated the polling results so that you can see shifts in sentiment over the course of this polling. A quick word of instruction for today's session, since we are not together in person. Please begin submitting brief questions for our guest speakers by using the Q&A feature while they are speaking, and I'll try to work those in as time permits. There is also a chat function. Please use that only if you have technical difficulties. So with that, let me thank our sponsor of today's session, CrowdStrike, and I'd like to introduce their Vice President of Public Sector, James Yeager, to say a few words of welcome and to introduce our special guest. James?
Thanks for having me, Brooks. CrowdStrike is super pleased to be a sponsor of today's special session of the NC Tech Government Vendor Network. And for those of you on the call today who are unfamiliar with CrowdStrike, please allow me just a minute to tell you a little bit about CrowdStrike. Simply put, we are in the breach prevention business. Our endpoint protection platform is delivered and managed via the cloud, and it offers a diverse set of capabilities via a single lightweight agent. From enterprise detection and response, next generation antivirus, hardware and software asset management, vulnerability management and compliance, managed hunting, just to name a few. Additionally, organizations can elect to have CrowdStrike fully manage your endpoint security program, addressing the full life cycle of security, from detection, prevention, investigation, through containment and remediation. This is an extremely valuable offering for those highly distressed public sector organizations who are struggling in the area of human capital. Finally, I'm proud to say that we have a tremendous team of fully dedicated professionals who wake up every day focused on how we can partner with the public sector in an effort to make them safer. To that end, hundreds of public sector customers go to sleep comfortably every night knowing that CrowdStrike has their back, including 10 states which have completely standardized on our platform, and many, many high-profile cities, counties, and educational institutions. Today, we're honored to have with us Tracy Doaks, who earlier this year was appointed by Governor Cooper as the new Secretary of the Department of IT and State Chief Information Officer. Tracy had been serving as the Chief Deputy State CIO since 2015 and prior to that was the CIO of the Department of Revenue. Her earlier career included technology leadership roles with Blue Cross and Accenture. We've invited Tracy to share with us today a little bit about the charge in which the governor has given her in her new assignment, along with the priorities and initiatives underway across the department. She has brought some of her leadership team today who will brief us on their area of focus. Tracy is no stranger to NC Tech. The Department of IT is a longtime member of the association, and in 2018, Tracy was named the state's Public Sector CIO of the Year by NC Tech. Now, please join me in welcoming our fellow member, Ms. Tracy Doaks.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm glad to be back with you again. Thank you very, very much for inviting me. I know this has been a long time coming, a lot of rescheduling happening, so I appreciate everyone being able to adjust as we are in adjustment time in our lives right now. As Brooks mentioned, and James, I am the new Secretary and State CIO for the North Carolina Department of Information Technology. Most of you know me as the Chief Deputy, and I worked with Chris Estes for 2 weeks, and Keith Werner when he was the State CIO, and Eric Boyette, and we are very close friends, and he was the State CIO, so I guess it was fitting that I finally sit in the seat, and I'm very, very happy to be here. One of the things I will mention, right before the governor appointed me, the discussion that we had was around broadband and cybersecurity as being two very top of mind things for the state of North Carolina. You can't imagine after COVID how more important those things are for us, including data and some of these other features that Department of IT is responsible for. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. What I do want to talk about for now is we have moved from this very frantic activity of scaling up and supporting the volume of transactions for the existing systems. And as you all know, that's more of a react mode or a respond mode. Now we're moving more into recovery as the governor has moved us into phase 2 now for our COVID recovery. And what I would say now, and I'm going to have an ask at the end of this, is that we take this opportunity in time to look at everything that we're doing, be it process, policy, or technology, to reinvent government. There's lots of things that we do today, or we have been doing before COVID, that don't seem relevant anymore. And so it's really important that we build something new in terms of technology and solutions that helps move the state forward even further. And this reinvention stage is what I'm going to continue to call it, is going to be a very large part of that. Today, you're going to hear my leadership team talk about what they're doing today. Some of it will be in support of the COVID efforts. But again, at the end of their discussion and my vision discussion, I'm going to have an ask. So please stay tuned as you listen to each of my valued team members present about their areas. Before my team talks about their divisions within DIT and what they're doing, I'd like to take a moment to introduce them. This team of folks, of leadership, have been so incredible and phenomenal to work with. We were all peers before we started this, and now we're a team as we try to move through this. As most of you know, I was named March 1st, and then immediately after a pandemic hit, and so we've been scrambling as a team to get to the right place, as well as managing our families. And so I do want to start, before I introduce them, is talk a bit about how much I value everything that they've done and what they're doing. And I'm very, very happy to have them as part of the senior leadership team. And so the org chart is up, And so presenting in order is going to be John Corellis, who is our Chief Data Officer. Jeff Searle is going to talk to us as the Director of the Broadband Infrastructure Office. Of course, many of you may already know Maria Thompson, who is our Enterprise Security and Risk Management Officer. Glenn Poplowski, who is a Deputy Secretary and responsible for solutions delivery. Our newest member is Susan Kellogg, and I'll talk a little bit more about her when I introduce her to present. But she's 8 weeks new, I believe. And so she came on right as the pandemic started as the new Chief Deputy State CIO responsible for service delivery. And then Nate Denny, who is our Chief of Staff. So very excited for you to hear from them today. I will have John Corellis start us off. John?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about some of the data division's priorities. I know this is somewhat of a speed round today, but I want to make sure everyone knows that we're happy to continue the conversation and dive a bit deeper into my division and the work activities, and always happy to sit down with the vendor partners, especially with NC Tech, to talk about what we have going on and see how we can partner together. But I'm going to breeze through this presentation because it is short, but to quickly summarize, the data division is focused on leveraging data assets to improve decision-making and support a data-driven government, right? Obviously, data and intelligence is key to understand how to improve services, right? So the division has a fairly large portfolio of data programs and projects, and at any given point in time, we have about 30 to 40 initiatives in flight. On this slide, you can see how we're organized around both domains, which are the verticals in the blue, and enterprise activities, which are the horizontals in the sort of greenish color. So looking at the verticals, you have criminal justice and safety, fraud and compliance, and financials, longitudinal performance, and healthcare, which one of the critical pieces to the healthcare portfolio is we run the state's health information exchange, which is called NC Health Connects, is run out of the division, and very critical and very important, especially during COVID. The domains are really the lines of business we support, but the value of data at the state increases when we integrate across these domains, because that's really where the new intelligence lies. So, really these domains start to blur, and when they start to blur, that's really the benefit. So, yes, the domains are very important, and that's where the analytics align to the business, but arguably the enterprise activities, which are the horizontals, are the foundational activities for all successful analytic efforts. So again, enterprise data government, good data management practices, how does the data connect, how do we integrate data, which is the entity resolution piece. Geospatial is hugely important, and the state of North Carolina has invested a lot of money and resources throughout the years into geospatial, and we have a real mature program at the state. And then, of course, analytic and visuals, and these cut across all the various domains. So from a prioritization perspective, we're always going to have a large portfolio of data initiatives, but there are some key priorities that we've identified for the division. One of them is expanding the health information exchange, and really kind of what does that really look like? And what we really want to do is increase the velocity of data connections that we have. Right now, we have over 6,000 healthcare facilities and close to, if not at 120 hospitals integrated with the HIE, which is amazing. And we've come a long way with the health information exchange with the state, but we still have more to go and more to do. We also want to expand the data feeds and improve data quality. I think, especially the folks on this call today, understand data is vitally important. So the better the data, specifically in the healthcare world, the better the treatment. We also want to implement additional capabilities and services that will improve treatment by the provider community by giving them more access to that information, or even more organized access to that information. And one thing that's extremely important is we want to make sure that the data is available to our partners at DHHS Public Health to aid in the response for things like COVID-19. So we want to make sure the right information gets in the right people's hands at the right time. Another key priority is modernizing the educational longitudinal data system, and that's kind of a mouthful to say. But what are we really talking about here? It's really about understanding and measuring the impact of various programs around early childhood, K-12, higher ed, workforce, and where these services and policies need to be improved through an integrated data approach. So a lot of what we're talking about is business and policy, but what we need is good, rich data that's integrated to actually be able to make some thoughtful decisions around policy and other improvement of services. So we are in the process of developing, in collaboration with some of the partners mentioned, an interoperability and modernization plan, which will help us define a technology architecture to support the identified objectives in the final plan. We're hoping to have that plan developed, the modernization plan, by early summer, so that we can then start thinking about technology and architecture that needs to be developed to support those objectives. And those objectives are probably going to be more related to policy objectives, what questions we need to, that leaders need to have answered about how well services are being performed. And if you think about COVID-19, the educational longitudinal data system has become increasingly important. When you think about the impact of COVID on students, workforce, and understanding how we need to improve those services, it becomes really, this data and this information becomes really valuable. Also thinking about some real big policy questions, which may not be asked today, but definitely in the future will be asked. How did COVID change the journeys of students? Where did they enter the workforce? Where did they enter college? And kind of how successful were the programs supporting those students' needs? Another priority, which is painfully obvious, is increase the use of data and analytics across the domains. This is really self-explanatory and a no-brainer. If we want to be a data-driven government, we need to use the data we have and implement the right analytics across the board to actually be able to inform our services. But we also need to have a focus on integrating our advanced geospatial capabilities with our analytic efforts. Another key focus is going to be extending the Enterprise Entity Resolution Initiative. And we call this EER. EER is both an infrastructure and a foundational framework for resolving entities and identifying relationships seamlessly across the domain. So what we're really talking about is how do we integrate data across the various programs and services to improve our analytics. So if we actually can integrate data more effectively and efficiently, it's going to allow us to get to that rich information that we need to make, or policymakers and others need to make decisions. Lastly, one of the key areas of focus is to develop and leverage APIs and data services. And this is really in partnership with the rest of DIT's team, as well as specifically Glenn Popowski, who you're going to hear from a little bit later on. This really speaks to us becoming more efficient and smarter about how we are developing or sharing data. So we need to move from focus less on data moving across the state and more on the development of efficient data services that can be used to support multiple program areas. So this is more about thinking at the enterprise level and not at the program level. So I don't know if I hit my 5-minute mark, but I appreciate everyone's time and look forward to future conversations.
John, thank you so much. I've been so proud of all the work that John and his staff has been doing to support COVID and in general what they do for the state of North Carolina. Next up is Jeff Searle, who is the director for the Broadband Infrastructure Office. So looking forward to hearing what Jeff has to say. Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and thank you, Brooks, and to everyone who has joined us today, taking the time. NC Tech has always been a big supporter of the Broadband Infrastructure Office in our work, so always appreciative and willing to come and speak to the group. Give you a little overview. If you're not familiar with our office, we are a small ragtag group of ne'er-do-wells who believe that all North Carolinians should be able to access affordable, reliable, high-speed access everywhere. Our daily mission statement is that any activity that we're working on should be ensuring that at least one additional North Carolinian has access to internet service. We do this organizationally a couple of different ways, 5 in fact. First, we publish a state broadband plan, which sets out the state strategy for access and adoption. And next, we partner and develop programs to achieve some of the recommendations that are in the state broadband plan. Many of these partnerships are with you all, and also include partnerships with county leaders, local leaders, state level, MCNC, and other key groups. Programs that we're working on include digital literacy curriculum and telehealth playbooks for telehealth local communities and community health centers. We also have a technical assistance team that works on the ground with communities and local leaders to walk them through a process so that they can engage the private internet service providers on ways that they can enhance activity in those communities. We developed an interactive community playbook that resides on our webpage, broadband.gov, that gives tools, including checklists, best practices, RFPs, sample ordinances, tower leasing agreements, etc. We also are very much like John's group in that we believe that data-driven decisions are the best decisions. And so we do a lot of work around mapping broadband coverage areas, assets, and also we have recently got into mapping and locating the trouble spots around the state for adoption issues. And when we talk about adoption, we need subscription to internet service and use of appreciable use of that service for things like telehealth or civic engagement and so forth. And then we also administer the Great Rural Grant Program. So that is the Growing Rural Economies with Access to Technology Rural Broadband Grant Program, which provides funding to internet service providers to lower their capital costs, to expand their services in areas around the state where market forces are not working or unavailable. Last year, was the first year of the program, and we distributed $9.9 million to connect over 10,000 households, community anchor institutions, ag operations, and businesses. This year, we just completed the application process for round 2. We have to publicly post those applications per the statute for 30 days, and they're on our website, so anyone can go and view them. And then we will score those applications. We have $15 million to distribute this year. We have over $22 million in requests for projects. The General Assembly recently enhanced the funding for that program by $9 million. So now we'll have $24 million, and we should be able to fund all of the project requests that have been submitted for this round. And then we're working and should have another round of rate that will open up sometime after the first of the fiscal year, July 1st, and should have another round of funding out before the end of the year. We also are working closely with our federal partners on federal grant and loan opportunities, including the USDA Reconnect loans and the Federal Communication Commission Rural Digital Opportunity Fund program. We conducted a webinar for providers that was hosted by us, and the webinar was conducted by the FCC regarding the program, RDF program, and we hope to have some other educational webinars for providers to engage in so they can take full advantage of that program, and so that North Carolina can realize the estimated $390 million that should come to the state to improve rural broadband access. So when we talk about the coverage areas and where we are as a state, I wanted to give you a map or a visual that was a reference point. Overall, the FCC estimates that at North Carolina, 95% of all households have access to broadband, which the FCC defines as 25 megabits per second download, 3 megabits per second upload. Typically, depending on the year, we'll rank somewhere around 15 out of all 50 states, and typically we're tied with Florida in the South. But we realize that the data published by the FCC isn't as granular as we would like it to be to make certain funding decisions or for planning purposes. So we worked with a researcher at Purdue University that looks at this data, broadband relevant data on a national basis, and hired him, and we created a couple of maps that we feel give communities a better picture of what broadband coverage or availability looks like in their areas. And this map is a representation of that. It lives on our website. It's interactive. You can go in, hover over different census tracts, and get an idea of what's going on in those census tracts. The index indicators are on your lower left-hand side, and we weigh each of those factors when we're scoring the census tract. Broadband access is certainly a big challenge in the state, but not as big as our adoption challenges in the state. And this index we created to visually demonstrate where we're having the biggest issues or challenges regarding adoption, and that's the subscription and use of the service. If you look at the darker colored areas or darker shaded areas, those are the main trouble spots. We know that cost is the largest or biggest, I should say, challenge or barrier to adoption of internet service. But we know that there are other factors. And so to get a good idea or measure of what's going on in a particular community, we created the index, and you can see the indicators down the lower left-hand side again that show what factors we took into consideration when scoring different areas of the state. And this is meant to be a guide for communities so that they can better prepare and plan on how to address this particular challenge. And then, in addition to using existing data to better inform our decisions, we've undertaken an initiative through a survey and built-in speed test to gather data directly from homeowners and business owners. We recently partnered with the Farm Bureau to conduct this survey with the speed test, and we've just finished and received those results, and we're reviewing those now, and we should have a report out and some other information in the coming weeks. We have this was a good first start for the survey. We learned a lot, and now we have opened up the survey to general citizens. It's a crowdsourcing type of tool. It can be used by different counties or local governments so that they can collect their demand aggregation data. And we'd like to see it used by the schools so that teachers can survey their students. The one problem that we've had across the state with these types of initiatives is that either separate counties or school systems will develop their own questionnaire and their own results. And then it's difficult to compare those to other counties or other local governments. It's like comparing apples to oranges. So we wanted to standardize the questions, and we wanted to build in the speed test. And that way, all the data would be collected in one location and would be uniform and standardized. And we can share that data with those entities. And we hope that this will give us a much more granular picture of what's going on at the household level. So that survey is up and ready. We'll have a phone component for those that don't have don't have web access at home, and they can dial in their address and indicate that they have no service. And then we have also a paper component for those folks who need that. So it comes in English and in Spanish. And so we hope to make it accessible by as many people in North Carolina as possible. That may be it for me. Oh, just another important point. I wanted to mention that over the last, I'd say 5 to 6 years, the state has realized over $130 million in grant funding. That's through the GREAT grant and through the federal grant programs to expand rural broadband access. And these are the locations around the state that have received funding from one source or another. On the left-hand side, you'll see where the funds have come from. We think this is a good thing. We've done very well as a state, and our local communities have done very well mobilizing and taking advantage of these funding opportunities. We'll continue to pursue that. We think that the funding is one of the biggest pieces of any plan that's typically missing in a community, and so we want to make sure that we can fund those areas where market forces aren't working as well. I think that should be it for me, but I appreciate the time and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. As I mentioned before, a broadband access to high-speed internet is certainly been an issue for a long time, and COVID has made that even more transparent, I guess, and elevated the issue even more across the state as folks are teleworking now, getting their health care through their computers and internet, as well as learning now that all the kids are home and they're also learning as well. So we're going to shift over to talk about another priority that we have, which is cybersecurity. And I will have Maria Thompson present.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Secretary Doaks mentioned, my name is Maria Thompson. I'm the State Chief Risk and Security Officer, and my office is the Enterprise Security Risk Management Office that sits within the Department of Information Technology. If you're not familiar with my office, generally our task in life, if you will, is to provide a governance structure for the state agencies as it relates to cybersecurity. But in the past, I would say a few years, we've encountered a lot of issues that, as the sponsor, CrowdStrike, may be able to attest to. There's been an increased attack against state and local government. And so this has allowed us to have to take a look at what we're doing and our focus as it pertains to cybersecurity and what we need to change as part of our strategic initiative. And what we've done is we've adopted what's called a whole of state approach to cybersecurity, which I'll go into a little bit more details with the further slide. Why are we adopting a whole of state approach? Well, this is one of many slides that I can show you as to the attacks that have been impacting our state and local government in the past couple of years. As you can see, 2019 was a really rough year for us. And it continued in 2020. And, we don't see an end to attacks because the bad guys out there have obviously gotten our number. It's not just the state of North Carolina. It's across the country that we are definitely seeing these targeted attacks against state and local government because of specific gaps that we have within our environment. And so the Enterprise Security Risk Management Office, what we've done is we have pulled together a team of professionals that includes our National Guard cyber team, that includes Department of Public Safety, cyber and emergency management. It includes our federal partners, FBI and DHS, that reside within our state, as well as our local IT strike teams that are part of the North Carolina Local Government Information Systems Association, NICOGISA. And we have been supporting these entities, the ones that are highlighted in red, with any type of cyber incidents that have occurred. So they've, as you can see, ransomware was one of the major attack vectors that were used within 2019 and 2020. And with the ones that are highlighted in red, we had boots on the ground to help and support them in their recovery and remediation aspects. And we're also heavily engaged in providing awareness training to our local counties and municipals and our academic institutions. We're leveraging our National Guard cyber team right now to go out and do assessments on the county infrastructure as a proactive measure to get them more resilient ahead of an attack. As part of our proactive measures, we are also deploying sensors on some of the county infrastructure to help alleviate the attacks that are coming in, to do some initial block and tackling, and also to add another layer of protection on the county infrastructure. Because as you know, we have our primaries coming up in June, and we also have our general elections in November. So we want to make sure that our elections, our county infrastructure are as resilient as possible, and that we have alerting mechanisms out there. So as I mentioned earlier, this is 2020, and this is, as you can see, March was a very rough month for us. And also we had the pandemic begin or have its impact on us starting in March. So as you can see, there was definitely two viruses, if you will, out there that we were focusing on and trying to recover and assist as much as possible. So for our vendor partners that are out there, these are some of the general high-level issues that we've identified within our local government. And these are the source spots, if you will, or pain points that they're experiencing that they can definitely need help with. And I put this to you as those that are operating in the cyber realm, that if we want to make an impact and if we want to truly make our state more secure, here is where we can put our best efforts towards, so that we can better secure our local government partners and our academic institutions that are out there. So how are we able to do this? One of the key things that we've been doing, in addition to creating relationships and building relationships with our local government partners, we are trying to do the same with our private sector partners to create that stronger bond of information sharing between us. And I wanted to bring to light this particular legislative update, just in case you may not be aware of it. But within House Bill 217, which was signed into law, I believe it was August of 2019, there is a highlighted area there that speaks to encouraging our private sector companies our partners to share cyber incidents with us. And the main reason for this is, as you all know, if you operate in the cyber world, the more information that we can get, the better we can protect each other. And so I strongly encourage everyone to share often, share more, share often, anonymize it as needed, but definitely allow us to be able to have that information so that we can effectively push that information out to our counties, to our municipals, to our schools, so that they can apply the appropriate blocks and so that they can protect themselves. Because as you can see in the previous slides, we are definitely being heavily targeted and we need help. And the only way that we can get better is if we do this together. So more near and dear to potentially your hearts, when you're doing business with, and this is just shifting gears, when you're doing business with the state and state agencies, this is an area where we have a little bit of that I think more education needs to be applied. And this is, what do you need to do? And what do you need to know? What are the agency's requirements in order to effectively fast track some of the contracts and negotiations that are ongoing? And as part of our vendor risk management process, we have a document called the Vendor Readiness Assessment Report. And I would highly encourage our vendor partners to take a look at this document and to be proactive in getting this information filled out ahead of time, so that there are no delays when we are having any kind of contract negotiations. Because this is where we tend to see a lot of latency in our procurement process because the security requirements are not being met. And the goal of this document is really to allow you to have to be aware of those mandatory security needs that need to be addressed ahead of time versus having to maybe filter through our security policies to address, to find out exactly what needs to be responded to or not. So again, this is really just to get you more, be a little bit more proactive and get you ahead of the game as far as what we're looking for so that we do not have delays as it pertains to security requirements. We do use a third-party rating system, and this is just for your information. We do use a third-party rating system that allows us to, when we're looking at multiple vendors, it allows us to look at which ones may necessarily be a little bit more secure or may need a little bit more work and help with our decision as far as which solution to move forward with. And this is something that is available to all the state agencies, and they're aware of that. And we also heavily leverage third-party attestations such as SOC 2 Type 2, FedRAMP, ISO, HITRUST, those types of third-party attestations that allow us to, through reciprocity, be able to get a better understanding of how secure your environments are and the solutions that you have to bring forth to us. So those are some of the key things. I highly, going back to my original slides, I do really want to focus on our partnership, our need to partner, private-public partnerships, so that we can get stronger and better within the state of North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I think you said the magic phrase that Eric and I and others have been talking about for the last couple of years. We are looking for vendor partners. And that's a really big deal for us because partners give the impression and understanding of collaboration and working together to find the right solution rather than trying to sell us a solution. And I think that's going to be a really important aspect that you will hear from me and the rest of my team going forward. I will now introduce Glenn Koplowski. If you could talk about solutions delivery for us, please.
And Glenn, before you jump in, this is Brooks. I want to remind everybody, if you have questions you'd like me to try to pose to the group in the time that we'll have left at the end, please use the Q&A function for that, and I'll be able to work those in as we can. So Glenn, over to you.
Thanks, Brooks. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today and look forward to future discussions with you. CIT Solutions Delivery Division is really focused on identifying and implementing solutions for agencies to meet their business needs. So our division is made predominantly of professional services, including project management, business analysis, solutions architecture, quality assurance, application development, digital services. A key priority of all of our divisions is digital transformation. It's key for the state as well as other states, which I'm sure you've heard about. It's really about changing the way we deliver services, resources, and information to meet the expectations of our customers, whether they're residents, visitors, or businesses. It's about enabling personal services anytime, anywhere, on any device, especially mobile. All of our divisions, from service delivery to solutions to GDAC to ESRMO and more, are working collaboratively and with other agencies to enable the state's digital transformation strategy. Our approach involves looking at transformation through three different lenses: people, process, and technology. People and process really being the most important. In terms of the people domain, we really have several efforts underway to skill up our staff through work with our partners, training platforms, and professional services, really in the areas of Agile, Cloud, DevOps, user and customer experience, process improvement, and much more. In terms of culture, to that end, we have created several communities of practice over the last few years to increase collaboration across state and local entities, as well as with our partners, to really introduce new ways of working and learning. Examples of the communities of practice include business analysis, application development, digital services, architecture, and more. We have communicated a lot of these efforts through events actually at our iCenter, the Innovation Center downtown, with our partners that have gone through the process of changing their culture and ways of working. So we really learned a lot from them in those efforts. In terms of regarding like the process domain, in transforming, we not only look at our current processes and potential re-engineering of those using some lean and customer experience principles, but we also need to look at some supporting functions like HR, finance, and procurement. In terms of HR, we're actually working with HR to understand new roles and skills, such as user experience designers, content strategists, data scientists, and more. In terms of procurement, we've actually enabled more contract vehicles to readily attain goods and services. You're probably very familiar. If not, I invite you to take a look at the 920S contract for IT services. It has several domains there and enables us to get work through an SOW approach we also intend to expand that contract in the future for high demand domains that help us move forward more quickly. In terms of finance, we're also looking at different ways for budgeting and funding approaches going forward, especially given new methodologies like Agile and DevOps to make sure we capture the demand as well as achieve economies of scale. Now, also in the process domain area, we mentioned before, a key aspect is re-engineering, which means we're leveraging lean and customer experience principles in our efforts. And at the heart of all these is really data. John Krellis mentioned it before. You can't manage what you don't measure. So a lot of things in terms of implementing new processes, re-engineering, implementing new technologies, we've got to be cognizant of putting measures in place so we can look at metrics and make sure how efficient we're being and how effective we are in terms of delivery of those services. And it also gives us opportunities for improvement going forward. Now, the benefits in tackling the digital transformation really are about benefits to the residents, visitors, and businesses, having services with less friction and available anytime, anywhere, on any device. States will benefit by having more satisfied customers, workforce that is better positioned for the future, and really business that is able to change more quickly. Now, to cover the technology demand aspect of our digital transformation, this is what we call our digital technology ecosystem. It's really a platform strategy, and where these capabilities, state as well as local government, will be able to transformatively deliver services. Now, service delivery, as well as others, they're really being involved in enabling several of these capabilities. And if you look at the bottom right, this is really where our platform or infrastructure layer is, and service delivery has been involved in enabling that cloud management platform, starting with AWS and Azure and Google, and we're also looking at IBM and Oracle, as well as ServiceNow. Dell Boomi, I believe, was mentioned previously in terms of API integration. We have service delivery has implemented Dell Boomi platform to enable data integration as well as API management capabilities. This is where the data as a service really comes into play, and that we can leverage going forward with and have a higher quality of data we're using our services being delivered. We're also looking at, if you look up layer above the integration layer, how we can leverage AI going forward, especially in dealing with the ever-growing data sets our staff have to deal with. We are currently leveraging AI in some of our security solutions, as well as chatbot and virtual assistants. The next layer up is the transactional and what we term intelligent business process management. Intelligent business process management is really about enabling complex process orchestration, leveraging underlying AI. You see several capabilities in there: Pay It, ServiceNow, and Pay It. Many of you are already familiar with. We have the MyNC DMV, which uses the Pay It platform, where you can currently renew your vehicle registration, license, or a duplicate license, register to vote, and more. That platform is actually being expanded to other state entities as well as local government to really enable the vision of having one citizen wallet going forward. Now, up the stack, you see the application services noted near the top of the diagram, and that's really enabling leverage of new or changed services utilizing these platforms such as SAP, Office 365, ServiceNow, Salesforce, and Digital Commons. SAP is a great example of a really fantastic shared service leveraging the grants management capability on the SAP platform. And finally, at the top too, we have the analytical and data services. This is where GDAC is doing a lot of work that John Krellis mentioned in partnership with SAS. We also have available Tableau and Power BI, ArcGIS, and Open Datasoft. And the one interesting piece there at the top too is what we note there is Sprinkler. Government hasn't been as good at marketing communications going forward, but it's really critical going forward to be able to communicate with our customers and then be able to leverage data around those interactions to see how we can identify priorities and pain points and fix those. Now, a key capability across all of these in terms of the services enablement is really a robust, easy to self-serve identity management solution for our customers. And we are currently in the process of procuring that new identity management solution right now. And in anything we do to transform, we have to be cognizant of security in everything we undertake. You see at the left all the security capabilities in our ecosystem. All of our teams and agencies work closely with Maria's team to ensure that what we put in place is secure and the data is well protected. And really what we're trying to do and what to have discussions with several of you on the phone in terms of how we can build out additional capabilities to improve the way we're delivering services going forward to those customers, whether they're residents, businesses, or visitors to the state.
Thank you, Glenn. That last slide is one of my favorite slides of all time, just because I don't think we've ever seen all of the solutions and the way that we're using them in the state all on one slide. So it is one of my favorite ones to show. Now I'm going to introduce Susan Kellogg, who is going to talk a bit about service delivery. Of course, we are joined at the hip since I've moved out of that role and she's moving into it. She was the CIO for UNC Keenan-Flagler School and also the deputy CIO for the UNC Chapel Hill centralized IT. So without any further ado, Susan Kellogg, welcome.
Hi, thank you. And as Tracy said, it's been a privilege to come into an organization that is as functional and headed in such a great direction, and so it's a real treat to, and Tracy has a lot bigger concerns beyond the service delivery organization, and but we do stay very close together. I have to say, the reason that I came to the state from the university, I was there for 17 years, and industry before that. And the reason I came is because of the things that Glenn was talking about and the others were talking about. Tremendous amount of transformation going on in the state. So I'll talk through. I am on week 8 of being at the state, so I would not say that I know as much as probably many of you know about the state. I'm learning quickly. I'll talk about some of the effects of COVID, but on the services organization, just to kind of break, and you probably have seen some information on this before, we've got our engineering group that's really our plan portion of the organization, enterprise applications, identity management services, hosting services, are part of our build and run. Service operations is taking care of the run. And then, of course, we have our business operations folks. Again, you've been working with many of these folks, and I'm sure I will be talking to you over time. But I think one message that's important is that I came here to continue the work that Tracy and Eric started. And so we're not looking at major shifts in services delivery. We are looking at continuing the great work and continuing the work throughout the organization. So I've been impressed every day at the collegiality of the group, and I work with just some phenomenal folks, and it's just been a real pleasure. So I am coming up to speed as fast as I can. Okay, so just real quickly to kind of give you a feel, because we have been doing a lot of support during the COVID crisis. We've been working with a lot of our partners. We are in a great situation with having super partners. There are some good things that are coming out of this. There's a strong and ongoing interest in cloud technology, rapid provisioning. You've been seeing it in the news. We've been living it on the back end, where working with the agencies that are front and center, but working to help them provision as quickly as possible. What we've seen is also some improved speed to adoption. Those are things we're hoping to be able to maintain. I think everyone would like it to slow down just a little bit, but there are some barriers and process, et cetera, that we've learned to that we can make some modifications. So we'll be working towards that. A good example is that there have been multiple call centers stood up, and some of them were grown in a matter of 2 to 3 weeks, and so some that have gone from 100 people to 2,000 people. And we've been able to do that because of the cloud presence that we have. We want to continue moving things to the cloud. You'll be hearing more about strategies in that. But we also have some great on-prem solutions that everything's been working very nicely together. The thing that's been interesting in this is that because of the work that was done before, technology was not the limitation. And particularly when we're talking about call centers, continuing with that example, the onboarding and training was the challenge because you can get the technology to provision rather rapidly, but getting the people trained so that they can answer the phones. And so some of the areas that Glenn Poplowski's group is looking at are some areas that may help us using artificial intelligence to overcome some of those challenges. So we are definitely seeing volumes beyond anything we've seen to date. And so if you look at any of the charts that you've seen on the governor's press conferences, you'll see that these are, and you hear it on the news, but to really see the numbers, this is not something that we have seen before. We don't know where the world is going. And so what the organization is going to be doing is making sure that we have that ability to provision very quickly in anything that we're doing. That's going to be another piece of it. So we'll be talking, I'm sure, over time. I'm happy to be here. And again, I'm in a great place because I have a great boss, and I'm not saying that just because she's on the call. I'd say that even if she wasn't, but also because she was over this organization before, and it's a great organization.
Thank you, ma'am. Nate, can you quickly introduce yourself for us before I do the last slide?
Yeah, I'll be very fast. I'm Nate Denny. I'm chief of staff and one of DIT's 2 legislative liaisons. The other is Lee Jackson. I spend most of my time educating legislators and managing our agency's response to the General Assembly and their oversight and appropriations committees. That, of course, means that I spend a significant amount of time running into your very wise legislative counsel, Ed Turlington and Matt Bales, as I try to advocate for DIT's priorities. On those, and I don't want to spoil too much of Secretary Doaks' presentation, this really means spending a lot of time advocating for broadband expansion and cybersecurity investment with the General Assembly. So I'll be very short today. As Secretary Doaks and a few other folks of on the team have said, we really value that partnership and collaboration. So please don't ever hesitate to reach out to Lee Jackson or me if you need anything on that front for DIT. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nate. Most of you will be talking to Nate if you don't already. So this is my last slide, and it is the one that most people have already seen. Earlier this year, we started working on our vision for the Department of Information Technology and knew that we wanted to build a culture of innovation and operational excellence. And so I'm not going to go through each of these because my senior leaders have talked about most of them already. So you've heard about the collaboration between local government and state government, and we want to continue to see that. I'd love to see a decentralized identity for the entire state for our citizens so they don't have to know which user ID and password to use for which application to access government. We also have digital transformation, which Glenn Poplowski talked about quite a bit, and we're using many, many solutions there in order to access or allow citizens to access information and to have better outcomes. Broadband, I think Jeff Searle covered that very well and pretty significantly, as well as cybersecurity. Lastly is workforce. So the only thing I want to say about workforce is we have got a very concerted effort on work culture, building the work culture that can support the vision that we're talking about. It is a very, very concentrated effort for our organization. As you know, some agencies have been optimized, so we're getting more and more IT staff in from other agencies. So it's building the culture that we want so that everyone wants to come to DIT. And lastly, I will also mention that we have an IT strategy board that is made up of private and public sector CIOs and technologists that also helping us build our initiatives in order to accomplish this vision that you've seen outlined here. So I promised you I was going to have an ask. So here's the ask. When we are looking for ways to partner with you to reinvent government for recovery. Again, particularly in the spirit of innovation and doing something new. So I want to thank you for your time today. I know we went a little bit over time, Brooks, and I apologize. We are so enthusiastic and passionate about the agency and what we're doing. So thank you very much on behalf of my colleagues and myself.
Well, thank you, Tracy, very much, and to all of your team. There was one question that was specific, so I want to toss that out your way before we move on. And then, of course, if anybody else has one, we'll try to grab it. And it might have been touched on by one of your speakers, but the question is, thanks for the session. Can you share which third-party rating service you leverage for evaluating security partners? That may be a Maria question.
It is a Maria question, and I hope she's paying attention. Maria, do you want to discuss that really quickly?
I am paying attention.
Yeah.
To it for change, right?
Yes.
We are using, the solution that we're using currently is BitSight. And we've been using it for about 2 years now. We're using it for multiple things, for vendor risk rating, and we're also using it to aid in our external monitoring of our agency's security or perimeter, if you will.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. We're now going to have our final segment, which is part of our sessions every time we convene like this, and that is the legislative overview. We are calling up a screen share now. I think I see it now. Yes, screen share of the report or the highlights of the report that our team, our dynamic duo from Brooks Pierce, Ed Turlington, and Matt Bales will give with us. If you have any questions again during this brief session, you're welcome to submit them on the Q&A function. And one of the questions we had was whether this is being recorded and will be distributed. It will be. Everyone who's registered today will be sent a follow-up, which will include, among other things, a link to this recorded session. So Ed and Matt, take it away.
Good afternoon, Brooks. This is Ed Turlington with the Brooks Pierce Law Firm. I'm pleased to be joined by my colleague, Matt Bales. Our law firm has been fortunate enough to represent NC Tech for over 10 years on government affairs matters. Before we give our brief report, and there's a handout on the screen, Secretary Doaks, we would like to add our voice to thank you and your team for your leadership, your vision, your expertise, your accessibility, your willing to dialogue. Thank you for all of that, and I know all of the industry appreciates it and looks forward to further interactions. So our handout has 3 key things as indicated by the Roman numerals. Matt and I, in just a couple of minutes, are going to highlight the details, and we're not going to read you this handout. It is meant to be a resource piece, and I would say our contact information is at the end of the handout. We represent the association. All of you are members of the association, and so if you want to follow up with us, you can reach out to us. So Roman numeral 1 deals with the governor's executive orders and reopening plans. I'm sure you're aware by now that yesterday Governor Cooper announced that he's issuing a new executive order, number 141, to move the state into phase 2 of the reopening plans. That can be found on his website, governor.nc.gov. You can also go to our homepage, brookspierce.com, and see not only the order, but our brief summary of it, and then some excellent frequently asked questions that were developed by the governor's staff. So that's Roman numeral 1. Roman numeral 2, and again, this is a resource piece, highlights the 2 key bills that were enacted into law unanimously by the General Assembly and signed by Governor Cooper at the COVID-19 session in late April. The policy bill, as you see there, as 704, we've put a few highlights, and then the appropriations bill, which allocates $1.6 billion in federal funding for a variety of purposes. Many of those are IT related. For example, under education, there are a number of items. On the second page, there's a pot of money that can be used for various state government IT functions. There is additional money for the GREAT program that Jeff described. And then one other thing under economic development, about the only state money appropriation in that bill was $125 million for a small business loan program. And you can see those details there. So that's Roman numeral 2. The final Roman numeral 3, concerns the legislative session that began on May 18th. And in even numbered years, the state has what is often called the short session, with its primary focus being to adjust the second year of our state budget. Well, not only do we have this virus that everyone's dealing with, a new budget was not enacted in the odd numbered years, so we've been working under continuation budgets. Matt especially has been following some of these details. Matt, I would ask that you share kind of the high points of this May session, where it might lead, and what some of the financial dynamics are.
So one of the big considerations going into the May session is where the state's revenue picture and what are the impacts to the state's revenues based on the pandemic we're all dealing with. And so as of tomorrow, I believe the General Assembly will be getting a consensus forecast from the North Carolina General Assembly's economist, Barry Boardson. And that forecast will be used to start shaping and putting in specifics on various budget provisions. It appears, based on the filing so far, as indicated in our bullet point 1 about the Senate money bills, that the Senate has taken the approach of filing 17 or 18 bills that will be amended to include allocations of funds based on the consensus forecast. The House has not made public their intentions, but we would expect to see some similar motions by them over the next few days to see how they are going to shape their budget proposals. I do not foresee a situation where we have a full big budget, as has been the traditional case in the odd number or the even number years, but we will probably see a continuation budget with a handful of bills that will fill specific areas and gaps in those areas. So, for example, DIT, their budget, mini budget bill last year was vetoed because of a provision that became controversial. So it might be likely we see some DIT funding to get their budget up, given the importance that we see them playing in this new pandemic environment. So bill filing was just also extended for the General Assembly. It will end next week. So it will be a lot of bill filings between now and the 26th of May. And so we'll be watching those, and we'll continue to update on relevant bills as it relates to NC Tech.
So, Brooks, those are the high points. Let me say as an aside, we really appreciate, as representing the industry, not only working with the secretary and her team, but Nate and Lee. They represent her and the entity very effectively. And this is one of those clients that, among the reasons we enjoy representing this industry, that there's so many things business and government can work on collaboratively. So we appreciate all of that. Brooks, be happy to take any questions, although I realize we've been on a while.
No, thank you. I appreciate the summary. And we will also, in addition to sending this video out to everyone, we'll have a link to the document that you just reviewed so people can see that easily. And I'd like to echo what you said about our partnership with DIT. Not only are they a member of the association, which is great, but we have been partners with them and on many occasions over many years of time on issues ranging from the ones discussed today to procurement in general and all sorts of other topics, and have worked with a lot of the folks that are on the screen, including Susan in a different life. So Susan Kellogg, welcome to you. It's your new role. With that, I'll just close out by thanking all of you for participating in our session today. I want to thank CrowdStrike for sponsoring, and also thank Cisco for powering our video technology today through WebEx. Be sure to visit us online at nctech.org for all of our programming and offerings. Thank you very much.